Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Creative Cow tutorial. And in our ongoing look at learning Avid's Media Composer and Symfony, I thought for this next lesson we would take a look at creating the most common effect, I would say probably the most common effect that you'll see in a documentary. And of course, I am talking about the Ken Burns effect. Now, the Ken Burns effect, you all know it. Basically, it's the taking of still images and zooming in, zooming out, and panning across. You'll also hear this effect more commonly referred to as a pan and zoom effect. Well, you have the ability to do this right from within the Media Composer interface with no third-party plugins. So I thought what we would do is we'd put together just a little short sequence with some shots doing the Ken Burns effect. We're going to go through the actual effect. We're going to talk about some of the parameters, and I'm going to show you how we're going to get this set up and how we can create some very cool effects. Okay, short introduction here. Now, before I say let's get into Symfony like I always do and let's get started, what I want to do is I want to encourage you guys to send me emails. If you're watching, let's say you work at a TV station, no matter where you are in the world, North America, South America, Antarctica, if you got TV stations down there, in the Arctic, over in Europe, I want you guys to send me emails. I want to start giving shout outs to people who are using Media Composer and who are watching these tutorials. And so for this lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a shout out to all my friends up at CTV, up at the 401 and McCowan Road here in Toronto, to Cyrus and all those guys and girls. Thank you very much for watching. And I'm going to give another shout out to Melissa and all the team watching down at Astral in downtown Toronto. So like I said, send me your emails. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to give you guys shout outs because I obviously want to encourage everyone. I want to get everyone out there to know what a great and fantastic program Media Composer and Symfony are. So let's get out there and let's spread the word. Okay, like I said, a little bit of a short introduction here, sort of a medium-length introduction. So let's just get into Symfony and let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to Alt-Tab into Symfony, obviously Command-Tab for all of my Mac friends out there. Now, this technique, whether you're using Symfony, whether you're using Media Composer, exactly the same technique. Now, one thing I do want to mention before I move on, and this is something that's very important, it's something that I try to mention as much as I can. I get emails from people all the time saying, I was trying to do X, Y, Z, and the system wasn't doing what it should be doing. And the first question I always ask is, are you running the most recent version of the application? Now, what's important to keep in mind is that I'm always using the most current version. Right now I'm using 6.5.2 of Symfony, which is the most recent version. But even if you're using version 5 of Media Composer, there are point updates that I always encourage you to download and install because those bugs are getting fixed. It's very important for you to remember that. Those bugs are getting fixed. So something that you might be having a problem with is something that's probably already been fixed in a bug update. So head on over to the Avid website, head on over to the Download Center, download those updates and install them. Trust me, it's going to make your editing experience much more enjoyable. Okay, so what we need to do here is I'm just going to open my sequences bin and let's see what we have in here. Nothing. Perfect. That's exactly what I want. Now, to get the effects started, you'll see that I have nothing in my timeline. I actually need a clip to get things going. And the clip is actually irrelevant to the actual Ken Burns effect. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick a rather long clip. Why don't I come into Motocross here? And let's just pick a clip. What I'm going to do to select a long clip here is I'm going to select the duration column, and I'm going to hit Control and E on Windows, Command and E on the Mac, and I'm going to sort. You'll see right now, as soon as I sort it, it's sorting from the shortest time down to the longest time. Now, what we can do to actually reverse that order and go from the longest time to the shortest time is on Windows we're going to hit Control Alt and E. On the Mac you're going to hit Command Option and E, and you'll see that that reverses the time. So now we're at the longest time first, shortest time last. Again, to reverse that, simply Control and E or Control Alt and E. So Command and E, Command Option and E for all my Mac friends out there. And I'm just going to take this clip here that's a minute long. And we're going to take the whole clip and we're just going to drop it in. Now, like I said, the clip is really irrelevant to what we're doing. I just need to create something in the timeline. Now, what's important to keep in mind about working with effects like Avid's Pan and Zoom is that you don't need to apply it to a clip. So, for example, let's say you had an edit here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start adding some gaps in here. Let's say, hypothetically, I wanted to go to the Ken Burns effect or the Pan and Zoom effect inside these gaps. Most people think that you need to attach the effect to an actual clip to do that, but you don't. All you actually have to do, I'm going to hit Control and 8 on Windows, Command and 8 on the Mac to call up the effects palette. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down here, and I believe it is in the image section. There it is, right at the top. Avid Pan and Zoom right there. Now, like I said, we don't need to apply this to an actual effect. All I have to do is simply take it and drag it down and drop it into any gap in my timeline, and I'm now ready to get in and work with this. It's actually a very fantastic feature. Now, why is this also great? Because doing things like this, what I can do is I can also add dissolves in between the effect and a shot. Very, very cool. And of course, I could dissolve out of that too if I wanted to. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to switch to the second layer here, because like I said, I only really put this clip in here just to actually create a timeline, because obviously, you know, when I'm applying that effect to nothing, when you don't really have anything in a timeline, you don't even have nothing to work with. So what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to remove everything except right down to the end here. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to add in some random edit points. We'll come to about here, we'll come to about here, sure about there, maybe about there, and then right down to the end. Okay, perfect. Now what I need to do again is we're going to apply the effect. I'm just going to grab Avid Pan and Zoom, and I'm actually going to start at the end, believe it or not. I'm going to come right down to the end because I do want to show you guys something before I forget, because it's something that's important that I make sure that I say when we're talking about putting the effect over top of a clip. Now I have the effect applied. You'll see right now I have nothing on the screen. The screen is black, although I know that right below the effect is the actual clip itself. Now in some cases you might want to do, let's say you're working on a documentary piece and you only want to show a news clipping and you want to show that news clipping over video footage. You can do that. I'm going to get to how we do that in just a second. But I just wanted to show you that when we actually apply the effect, everything goes black. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step into effects mode. Now you all know my shortcut for effects mode, Shift and Y on the keyboard. Now again, you also know that I always say this, if you don't have effects mode mapped to your keyboard, you can always find it right here at the bottom of the composer window, over here on the left hand side of the timeline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step into effects mode, and as soon as I do, you're going to see that I'm now brought to the Avid Pan and Zoom effects parameters here. And what I'm going to do is just jump ahead a little bit, because remember I said that right now when I have the effect applied, I'm just looking at it on top of a black background, but if I actually wanted this to be over top of the image that's below it, where you find that is background. Now for me, background should actually be more so up at the top, right below import image, because I think it's sort of an important decision you need to make when you first apply the effect. So you'll see I can switch it to video, and we'll actually have the pan and zoom happening over top of video, or we can switch it back to a color background. And obviously this color background could be anything we want. We could eyedrop, you know, that color there. Let's actually try that again here. Is it going to do it? No, it doesn't seem to want to do it. That's kind of an interesting little bug. What it should do, and maybe it's because I'm actually, let's try it like this. There we go. It doesn't like it in the preview window, but it likes it in the actual effect window here. So now when I switch back to color, there's that color that we just eyedropped. So keep that in mind. Look at that, I just learned something. Keep that in mind. If you want to select a color, you can really only select a color below the actual effect itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do though is I'm going to switch this back to black, because black is the color that we want here. There's black, we'll say okay. And let's head right back to the top of the effect, because that's really where we need to start, because we obviously need to import media to work with. And the very first option we have is, of course, import image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. You'll see I have some of my wedding pictures here. I always joke with my wife that she's probably one of the most famous brides on the internet, because I use footage of our wedding, I use stills of our wedding. Why do I use them? Well, not only because I think they're fabulous pictures, but she's my wife, and she really, you know, she can't say no. What am I going to do? Say, hey, you know, honey, I want to, you know, show off how great you looked on our wedding day. No, don't show off how great I looked on our wedding day. But so I always have a good laugh with her about that. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start out with a picture. Why don't we start with this one here? I always like this picture that shows off the car from our wedding day. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do sort of a slow pullback from my wife and myself, just back to reveal the car. Now, this is going to be the last shot. So what we're going to do is we're going to come right back to the beginning here, right back to the beginning of the shot. And what I need to make sure of is that you'll see the very next option I have is to display the source or to display the target. You'll see right now they're actually the same thing. Now, what I'm going to do here as well is I'm just going to turn off the grid, because you'll see that I already have a grid here. Looks kind of like such. Now you'll see that I can show the safe action, which I can turn off. And we have this other great feature, so show subres in preview. Now, to be perfectly honest, I have no idea what this means, because to be perfectly honest, I never use it. So I'm just going to leave it checked off. You know, why would I turn it on if I actually never use it? So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to zoom in. You'll see as soon as I zoom in, that actual safe action is showing me what is actually going to be displayed in the pan and zoom effect. So like I said, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to zoom pretty much most of the way in here. And I can also grab the target on the screen and move it like such so that we can center ourselves up. Kind of like this. Now I don't want to get too close because I don't want to see any black in the frame. There we go. So this is going to be the starting frame. And like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to pull back to reveal the entire image. I'm just going to come back to the effects editor here for a second. And I'm just going to make sure that I click on that keyframe there. And so now that we have our area basically set up, you'll see that we can actually adjust it by doing what I just did, by grabbing the little target and positioning it wherever we want, which for me, to be perfectly honest, I find that the easiest way to do things as opposed to getting in and adjusting the XY position here, but you could do that if you wanted to. So you sort of have that option, which is always handy to have. Now next you're going to see the velocity. The velocity is set to ease in and ease out, which to be perfectly honest drives me crazy. So I'm just going to set it to be linear. There we go. And the path is set to linear as well. Now we talked about the background, and we have some advanced options down here as well. Now the source has square pixels. Well, it came from a digital camera, so of course it has square pixels. Next, the source has RGB levels. Again, it came from a camera, so or a DSLR, so it does have RGB levels. And you'll see that we can actually get in and we can clear up the cache from in here as well. And one thing that we can also do is inside render mode, we can actually set this to be progressive, which is how I'm working right now. So like I said, what we want to do is just a slow move out, and this is going to be, sort of all the way up to the end until we fade to black. So what I'm going to do is just come all the way down to the end here in a couple ways, like we talked about before, that we can do this. I can just hit the old keyframe button to add a keyframe in right here, or what I can do is I can actually just twirl out the advanced keyframes. And since I know I'm only going to be adjusting a couple of them, like zoom, I can add a keyframe for that, X position and Y position, like such. There we go. And you'll see now I only have those parameters to adjust. Now what I'm going to do is just undo what I just did here, because for some reason it added them in for velocity as well. There we go. Okay. Now to be perfectly honest, it really doesn't matter. In most cases you could just add keyframes for everything, but I just wanted to just remind you that you can get in and you can do that as well. So now that I have the keyframe set here, and we have the keyframe set here, we know that this keyframe here is obviously for this first position that we have. What I want to do is just set the last position as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set the X position to be 0, the Y position to be 0 as well, and we're just going to set the zoom factor to be 1, just like such. So what it's going to do is it's going to pull back over time. Now you'll see something's not right here. So let's just undo what we just did. There we go. Very cool. Let's copy this. Let's make sure that on this keyframe here, what I'm going to do is just hit the old keyframe button here again. And let's set the zoom factor here just to zoom out here. There we go. We'll set this, just make sure that's at 1. Put this at 0. Put this at 0. Let's see if it actually does what it was supposed to do now. No, it's still not quite doing what it should be doing. So what I'm going to do is just paste that value back in. So now what we have, there we go. Not sure why I wanted to do that, but that's okay. Very nice. Now how do I actually see what it's doing? Well, you'll remember I talked right at the beginning about the display is set to source. Well, all I'm going to do is switch that and set it to target. And now what we have is the actual pan and zoom effect. Now you'll see just by the nature of the picture I'm a little bit cut off, but that's okay. I don't necessarily mind that. Now remember, what I could also do here is I could come back to this first keyframe, and if I wanted to, I could cheat safe a little bit here, and we could just start about there, I think. I think that's a little bit better. Okay, then we could just zoom all the way out here, and we'll just come out a little bit farther at the end here. Not that much, that's a bit much. Let's go to 0.9 maybe. You'll see because of just the nature of the way that the image is, it's obviously a little bit higher than it is wide. Now the question is, do I mind seeing that little bit of black? I don't necessarily mind in this case. I think I'm okay with it. Very nice. Okay, now so let's go through and let's add in some other pictures so that we have a bit of a sequence going on here. So what I'm going to do is just step out of effects mode here. I'm just going to hit Y on the keyboard, which is my shortcut to step out of effects mode. What we're going to do is come back to that first range that we'd created. I'm going to again hit Control and 8 on Windows, Command and 8 on the Mac. Let's take Avid Pan and Zoom, just drag it and drop it right in there. We're going to step into effects mode. Shift and Y is my shortcut. I won't get into the other shortcuts because I know that you've probably got them ingrained into your brain by now. Again, very first thing we do, import image. And why don't we do, let's do the one of my wife at the door. This is actually a really nice picture. We like this picture a lot. So what we're going to do is just zoom in, and it's just going to be a slow move up right from the beginning. Now again, I'm not going to get into the the finite keyframes right down here, or the keyframe graphs. I'm just going to do a general keyframe for everything because I'm okay with that. And I need to be precise because I don't want to monkey around with the Y or the X value here. So what we're going to do is just sort of do a very slow move up here. We'll just add another keyframe here. And we'll just have it move up to about here. I think that's looking good. Now what's important to keep in mind, I'm just going to step out of effects mode for a second here, is that if you don't get in and switch that value here to be the actual target, you see it doesn't switch over and you're stuck with a view like this. Now what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to step back in here. We're just going to select everything. I'm just going to make sure that I have linear selected. Linear, very nice. And we'll switch this over to the target view. There we go, very nice. There's my beautiful wife. Very cool. Okay, again, now we're just going to grab another one here. Have it pan and zoom, and you see how easy this is. And like I said, if you're doing something like, let's say, you're working on a crime drama, you've got mug shots, you've got, newspaper clippings, that's where I would suggest getting in and doing things over top of a background, a video background. It just creates a very cool look, sort of a very, create a blurred background. You have maybe the mug shot, and then you have the newspaper clipping beside it. You can create some very dramatic effects like that. Now again, what we're going to do is we're going to import an image, and I think I'm going to, normally for me, I always like to go from vertical to horizontal, horizontal to vertical. I don't like to go from one to the other. So what I'm going to do in this case here is I'm going to pick, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this one right here. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to zoom in on us. Now let me just see I'm actually going to zoom out a bit here. See the target here for a second. I'm just going to zoom all the way back. Very cool. Okay, we'll just zoom in maybe to about there. What we can do is actually just switch back over to the source here for a second. You'll see that sometimes it's not exactly completely accurate. Now what I should have done here actually first, I should have made that progressive here. And what I want to do here again is I'm just going to show the target, because you'll see that if I show the target and then I come up a little bit here, you see I get more of a view of my head than I actually have here if I look at the source like that. So let's just take a look at it like that. Okay, I'm happy with where that is there. Now the only thing I need to decide is where do I want this to start. So let's just switch back to target view here. Let's try that again here. Pardon me, let's switch back to source view. There we go. And I just want it to be just sort of a slow pan over. So what we're going to do is just add a keyframe. Again, I'm just going to want to adjust the X position, not too much. Down to the end here. We're going to add in another keyframe. Just a very slow move. Remember, this is sort of a bit of a longer shot, so I'm even happy with the way that that looks. Now again, we're going to switch back to the target. There we go. It's funny because actually looking at the pictures, as close as they are now, of course you'll see as soon as I did that, as soon as I went fast through this, you'll see right away that of course I forgot to set this to be linear. I'm not a big fan of the ease in and ease out. I like my moves to be sort of happening as soon as we go to them. And I was about to say that, I actually like working with these pictures for my wedding because normally I don't get to see the pictures this close up. And it always reminds me how beautiful my wife is. I hope she's watching this when I say that. Okay, so we got a couple more here to do, so let's just throw them in quick here. Again, what we're going to do with this one is it's going to be a vertical one. And this is a great picture. I really like this picture here. We're going to zoom in a little bit, and again, this is just going to be a slow move. We're just going to start down low, about there, add a keyframe, come all the way down to the end here, add another keyframe, and we're just going to again adjust the Y position. Now we want to make sure, of course, that we're set to progressive here, which I believe we are. Again, we need to make sure that we're linear all the way. Very nice. Let's just make sure here that I was progressive, which I am now. And we've got one last one to do, and of course you just saw that I forgot to switch this over to target view. Last but certainly not least, I think with this one we do a zoom out, so that's okay. Okay, we're going to hit Control and 8 here. Again, last one. Drag and drop it. There we go. I'm going to say import image. And I think what we're going to do, since that last one is zoom out, we'll just do why don't we do a slow zoom in on this one here. So let's just do that. Now this one I'm just going to grab the target here and just repo it like such. I think that's nice. Now you'll see it added a keyframe, which I'm going to get rid of. It's one of the little sort of quirks in version 6.5 that will always add a keyframe if you get in and adjust things inside of the composer window. Okay, so again, let's add a keyframe at the beginning, which we have. Just a very slow move in, nothing fancy. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this into, I don't know, 3.2 maybe. That's pretty good. I think I'm happy with that. Just very subtle. Perfect. Okay, now again, linear, linear, and linear. And of course, we want to switch to target. And there we go. Very nice. Now, did I set that as progressive? I did not. There we go. So now we have all the shots for our pan and zoom. Very cool. And the last one there. I think actually what I'm going to do for this one, now that I see it, is that move is too far. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to remove the effect. Now you'll remember that when I remove the effect, it's not attached to anything. So let's just do that again. I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to do a very slow move, because I sort of like the way that things are right now. And remember, we're going to come back to 0.9, and I just need to see what it's actually going to show me here. There we go, because I want to see sort of all of me. Obviously, I don't mind if there's a little bit of black at the edge, but it's important to see all of me from the top to the bottom here. So that's going to be our keyframe. What we're going to do is we're going to come back here. We're going to set the first keyframe to be a value of 1. Because like I said, this is just going to be a very slow move, and we're going to adjust the Y position a little bit, just so you see a little bit more of my head. Perfect. Okay. Now this kind of matches with everything else. This was a very fast move. Again, linear, linear. There we go. Okay. Very slow and very nice. Okay, now there is one last thing that I want to show you. And what that is really the reason that I don't like that ease in and ease out parameter you can put on the Ken Burns effect. And the reason I don't like that is because there's so many times where I'll create a sequence like this, and what will happen is I'll say, okay, well, you know what I want to do now is I want to add dissolves in between each one of these shots. And what happens is that the shot starts moving, it moves up to sort of full speed, goes full speed, slows down to a stop, then it fades. Then the next one, fades up. Then it ramps in. And I want these to be all smooth moves in between each one of the shots. That's why I always use linear, because what's going to happen is that as soon as I put a dissolve on one of these effects, it's actually going to extend that move beyond the edges of the edit here and incorporate it into the dissolve. Let me show you what I mean. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back. I'm just going to mark the entire range of edits just like this. And what I'm going to do here as well is I'm going to put a dissolve at the start here. So we fade in. And what I'm also going to do is put one at the end here. We're going to dissolve and fade out here. Okay? And let's just make sure actually that I remove this clip here from the bottom, because we want to fade to black. Very cool. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do now is mark an in point, mark an out point, select that entire duration. I'm going to hit dissolve on the keyboard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply to all transitions into out, and I'm simply going to say add. Now as soon as I do that, you're going to see that as I come through, it now dissolves in, and the move, now what I should have done here though, so I should have had that centered. There we go. And maybe we'll even make it slower. Let's make it 48 frames and just simply say add, because what's important to keep in mind, I should have said add to all there. Let's try that again, apply to all 48. What's important to keep in mind is that if you end up applying these effects to clips, clips only go so long. By applying them to nothing, technically these clips can go on forever in both directions. So you'll see that by applying that 2-second fade, what I can now do is simply hit play here. And here's the first shot of my wife. What I'm actually going to do is just jump down here to the transition and take a look at that. A perfectly smooth move and transition from one shot to the other. Now I'm imagining some kind of romantic music playing in the background here. We'll fade into the next shot right about here, and then I'll jump down to the next shot. There we go. Fantastic. Very nice. And you see that creating the Ken Burns effect inside a Media Composer and Symfony is very simple to do with the built-in Avid Pan and Zoom plugin and a little bit of creativity on your own part. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to me at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.